Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 156. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist and number one best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction. Align yourself with the manifesting conditions and successfully attract your desires. I'm also the founder of hiptalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores today. And today I have a very special guest with me, Andrew Wallas. Andrew Wallas is a serial entrepreneur, author, public speaker, corporate shaman, and pioneer in business culture and transformation. He is the founder of Business Alchemy, a set of guiding principles that penetrate the DNA of a business to drive change. He is passionate about showing people that there is an alternative strategy for creating and building sustainable businesses. He's also the author of several books, Business Alchemy, Intention, both written solely by Andrew Wallas. And then he's also the author of Call Off the Search by both Andrew Wallas and Anna Pasternak. And those are available on Amazon. And you can find all those links in our show notes. And you can also find him at andrewwallas.org and the School for Business Alchemy.org. And you can also get to his YouTube channel, his LinkedIn pages, and all of that in our show notes. And so today, Andrew is going to be sharing some of his insights on the power of intention. So, welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It always sounds so much better when someone else introduces you. It's amazing. Who is this guy?
It does. I love it. I love it. Well, you have definitely accomplished a lot. And it's always nice to, just to hear it out loud and get that reaffirmation, that validation of all the wonderful things that you've accomplished. You are very well accomplished. So take that, take that in and, allow that to, just put a smile on your face.
It does.
And
It does.
yeah. So, intention is like
Yeah.
definitely being a law of attraction person, manifesting person myself. Intention, I 100% wholeheartedly am on the same page with. It's probably one of the most important principles that you could ever really incorporate into your life, into your business, into everything. It really all starts there. So I'm really excited about today's episode and diving into this really important principle. So tell me just a little bit before we really get into just the hows and the whats and all of that. How did your journey take you to understanding the power of intention and and creating these wonderful organizations that you've created?
Well, Victoria, I started with a career in business in the
Mhm.
1970s, a long time ago. And I built a couple of businesses reasonably successful. And I was very driven, flying around the world. I had a huge ego. I thought I was amazing. And eventually I kind of hit a bit of a wall at a relatively young age. And I thought there has to be something more than this. So, it's a well-trodden pathway. And I'm eternally grateful that I got to that place at a relatively young age. So at that point, I went into my own personal psychotherapy. I started exploring the inner world. I started dealing with some issues that I had. And from that, I trained as a psychotherapist and I started working with individuals. I had a clinical practice. And after about 10 years of that, I thought I wanted to apply these principles or these ideas to organizations. And so I then started working with organizations and seeing the effect on business, and also seeing how businesses had their own pathology, their own blocks, their own limitations that actually could be freed up, just like an individual in their own explorational journey. And the results from that were phenomenal. So I decided to start articulating that and writing down, the work that I was doing.
Great. You sound like you started a little bit like I did because I was in the corporate world, and then I kind of hit that point where it's like, is this all there is? And feeling a little burnt out, and throughout my own personal discovery, deciding, I didn't become a psychotherapist, I became a hypnotist, but still kind of the same sort of thing applied. And so it's really I'm really glad that that happened for you, because now you're able to help so many people and businesses, to really discover what it is that that makes them tick and makes them successful. So when we dive into the intention, can you kind of give us a little bit of how you would define that for our audience?
Of course. So I talk a lot about alchemy, and I love the word alchemy because alchemy is an old kind of medieval term which owes its roots to people trying to change this base metal, lead or tin or metal, into gold. And so it's got this essence of amazing transformation of changing one thing to another. And for me, the alchemy in our life starts and ends with intention. Intention is the single most important thing. And I often use the analogy that intention is like a seed. And a seed contains everything necessary to create what it wants to create. So a pumpkin seed creates a pumpkin. An acorn creates an oak. Whatever you plant, you know that it's going to create and manifest the results of the seed. And intention is exactly like that. So intention is the seed for all reality. I call it the DNA of all reality. So if you look at the reality that you're creating, then that's the seed you've planted. And the good news about that is if you've planted one seed and you've created an unhappy life, an unhappy relationship, a business that's struggling, if you stand back from that and say, okay, I'm going to look at intention, I'm going to look at planting a different seed to create a happy life, to create a successful business, then that's where it starts.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that analogy of it is the seed, and inside that seed, it holds ultimately the DNA for everything that your life and your business is going to do. And so some sometimes I get a little stopped up, because I'm a goal setter and I also set intentions. And so I want to try to make a distinction here between, how would you distinguish between a company that has goals and a company that has intention?
Sure, it's a great question. So this is not the only way to explain it, but for me, obviously, I deal with a lot of businesses, I deal with individuals that set goals, and most of us, most of the people listening, I'm sure, have set goals in their personal life or their professional life in one form or another. And some of those goals are realized, but many of them are not. Now, the way I explain it is to say that we live in a very mind-dominated culture. So all of our cultures pretty much are mind dominated. And not only are they mind dominated, but they're pretty much left brain dominated. So the left brain deals with analysis, rationality, logic. It's very linear. It starts here, it ends there. And this is the left brain. It's very powerful. It's very important. But we tend to neglect the right brain, which is very magical. It's not linear. It thinks in spirals. It's concerned with intuition, it's concerned with instinct, all of this. So first of all, goal setting is pretty much a left brain mind dominated activity. It's very logical, it's very analytical. So I bring in the right brain, and then I bring in the heart. So rather than being mind dominated, I often say to businesses, what would it look like if you were heart centered businesses? And a lot of very driven businessmen and women see that if you drop too much into your heart, you'll be weak. The heart is seen as weak, and the heart is seen as not as efficient, not as ruthless. In fact, it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we start with the left, the right brain, then we drop into the heart, and then finally, or penultimately, we drop into the gut. So there's a lot of interest in the world right now about the gut. Scientists and doctors are calling it the second brain. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, the gut has more influence on your mood and how you're feeling than your brain. So gut instinct, any successful person that I've met in any kind of business has great intuition and great gut instinct. So I teach people and go into businesses asking them to reclaim this more holistic approach. So you've got the left brain, the right brain, the heart, and the gut. So intention, I always say, and this is not everybody sees this immediately, but intention is not something you create, it's something you discover. So by listening more to the totality of your brain, listening to your heart, listening to your gut instinct, you discover an intention for your business, or you discover an intention for your life. So I would say that goal setting is a little bit surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that derogatory, but I'm just saying there's a whole lot more that you can access that gives greater power to your intention. Because as you know, Victoria, you talk about the subconscious, you work with the unconscious. That's often undermining the goal that you set.
Exactly. So the intention, would you say, is that more of an unconscious discovery?
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, it's
I
okay.
would say it's a conscious and unconscious, and you discover the intention in a conscious way, but then you align you bring everything into alignment with that intention, and that includes looking at the unconscious blocks in the same way that you would, and bringing everything into alignment. And the great thing about intention, and it applies to everything, the law of attraction, is reality is the most reliable teacher there is. You know, what a lot of us do, and I've done it for years and years in my life, we fight with reality, we argue with reality, we complain about reality. And, you know, in Britain, we spend a lot of time complaining about the weather, for example, even trivial things. But reality, it's like with intention, reality is like a biofeedback loop. It's constantly showing us where our
Yeah.
intention is. So if we're not manifesting, if we're not realizing the business we want, if we're not realizing the life we want, look at reality and ask the question, what is getting in the way?
I love
Rather than
that.
looking around for someone else to blame. You know, blaming anyone or anything is a dead end. It just doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. No, I 100% am, it's in a way, it's a higher level of taking responsibility
Yeah.
for what you create, and just looking at, everything that's going on and owning it and saying, it was my intention to create this. Now, maybe that if I had a little bit more intentionality about setting my intention, I wouldn't have created that. And so I'd love to kind of get into that. I noticed like this morning, so this morning I'm out in the hills, in and doing my manifestation. I mean, this backyard I have is amazing. It's like my own little hiking trail. And when I say little, it's big. It goes on for miles and miles and miles. And I'm out there all by myself. So I'm like out there, saying my intention and everything to the universe. And I've been intending for a certain result, a certain number of let's just say it was one part of my business. I've been intending for that to grow, and it's been actually growing really well. But this morning, as I'm out there just like, yeah, I'm manifesting, blah, 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 and just doing it. And then I came back and there was like a dip in the number,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, you know what? That was when a few days ago, I got involved in some unnecessary negative drama. And so that is what's showing up for me today is as a result of letting myself get engaged and letting somebody impact my vibe. And and that was a conversation that I had even just yesterday. It's like, this setting intention, it really requires a high level of discipline,
Yeah.
to not allow yourself to get distracted by the like little short term things that get in the way, the conflict and the reality, and really just out, like today it's like, okay, I went down by that number, but here's why. Here's
Yeah.
why. It was my intention the other day
You see,
that kind of
it's
got in the
such,
way.
yeah, and it's a wonderful example of all of this, Victoria, because what you did, which you're very practiced at doing, you took responsibility and you talked about this. I sometimes talk about radical responsibility, and it's not really radical at all, but I think we live in a culture where there's less and less responsibility all around. And we're not really taught this very well in schools or, in our families. But responsibility actually comes from a Latin word, responsere, and it
Mm.
literally means to respond.
Mhm.
And so responsibility is how do we respond to life? And so something happens in your life and you respond by looking for what got in the way of what you're wanting to achieve. Most people, when life doesn't go exactly as we want it to, they respond by looking for something else to blame. It
Mhm.
could be, there's a recession. It could be the anything. It could be a friend. It could be the business. It could be trading conditions. But the moment you give that responsibility to someone else, you're going to stay stuck. So the
Yes.
first step, which you are very well practiced at, but it takes some discipline, as you said, it is to just take responsibility and say, how am I going to respond to this? And the intelligent question is always, why would I have created this? Or how did I create this? And there's no blame in that. I'm not blaming myself. You didn't blame yourself. There was a curiosity. What was it that got in the way? And from that place of curiosity, you think, that was it. And you
Mhm.
clear it. And in a way,
Exactly.
life, I often use the analogy that it's like sweeping the path to our front door every morning. We have to keep clearing the path because there's stuff that gets in the way.
You absolutely do. And I mean, I just really think that this makes all the difference in the world between a person who's, going to create a success in their business or in their life or in their
Yeah,
relationship, and a person who's not, because it's a beautiful thing actually when a person can take responsibility. And like you said, there's a distinction between responsibility and blame. So many people
yeah,
confuse the two and interrelate the two, but the two are not. There's no blame and responsibility. It's just simply choosing your response, and
exactly.
that's
And
really.
blame is a dead end. All that blame doesn't achieve anything. Responsibility achieves everything. And one of the
Mm.
analogies that I use, which I've used it thousands of times in businesses and personally, and to begin with, some people think it's a little far-fetched, but for me, this is the perfect analogy of what we're talking about now. And I say, imagine you're sitting in a cinema and you're watching a film of Titanic or whatever I don't know what the recent films are.
Okay, why
And
did
you,
I hear that for the second time today? The
there you
Titanic, like
go,
that's
Titanic.
crazy.
It could be any film. And you get to a bit you don't like, and you jump out of your seat and you walk up to the screen and you start trying to change what the characters in the film are doing, or you change what's happening in the film. Now, if you or I did that, somebody quite quickly would stop us and put us in a mental institution. They say, that's insane, because why are you doing that? And yet that's how most people are running their lives and running their businesses. They're trying to change the outer furniture of their life. And to be honest, it's a dead end. If instead we got out of our seat and we went up to the projector room and we took the film out and we put another film in the projector, you get a different film. Now that's the power of intention. That's what intention is. Intention is what's behind the projector that creates the image on the screen.
That
And
is,
when we,
that is a great analogy.
it's a
I
great
love.
analogy. That is
Yes.
exactly how it works. And when we truly understand that, it's immensely powerful.
It is. Oh, that is wonderful. I would just, I would love to hear how you teach this to businesses, you know, and to like, do you teach this at the like large scale businesses or
Yeah.
smaller businesses
So
or?
yeah, all size businesses, including some large ones. And what's always fascinating to me is any business, small, large, or big, normally has a leadership team of not more than 10 people. So I
Mhm.
normally work with the CEO, the chairman, the finance director, whatever. And I could have with anything from 6 to 12 people in a room. And when you sit down at the beginning of the day, I just ask the simple question, what is the intention of this business?
Mhm.
And what fascinates me, within an hour, you've got people arguing quite vehemently and people disagreeing. And what that
Mhm.
tells you, there is no agreed intention.
Yeah.
So companies think they've got a mission statement, they think they've gone through this process, they've articulated their values, but actually, when you explore it, it's not obvious at all. And in fact, various individuals and various areas of the business are working against each other.
Mhm.
So when you take a team of 6, 7, 8 people through a process, there's always a moment in the day it's like an aha moment. It's like a little epiphany when everyone sits there and says, that's it. And that's the power again of when you get people together and you say, that's what we're doing. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And I talk about the business as having an identity of itself. So it's discovering the DNA of the business, discovering the intention of the business. And that's a very powerful process.
I
And,
love
and
that.
when you arrive at that place, it's not everyone's nodding their head and they said, that's it. It's not that they don't recognize it, but they fully articulated it and everyone shares it. Everyone buys into it.
That is great. You know, and that's actually something I'm starting to get to a place where I'm incorporating in my business because, you know, I have this app and I hire a lot of different freelancers, and you know, we don't, you know, this one does their thing, this one does their thing, and I had a development team that was just not really on the same page with me, didn't really have time for it. So I just kind of heard a message that I just needed to get everybody on the same page, get a new development team, and get everybody, you know, Monday morning is going to be our morning. Even though everybody has their different jobs, if you're working even as a freelancer for this organization, we all need to have a shared vision. And I kind of think of intention in a way as having that shared vision. Like we all know, you know, that like, you know, we're all on the same page, and there's just some, I don't know, there's just magical energy in that, and that there's power in that.
It's
And every,
absolutely magical.
yeah.
Yeah. And you know, what we do with businesses after we've articulated the attention, we move on to alignment, which you've just really
Alignment.
talked about there.
Mm,
And the thing about intention, it's what logicians and mathematicians call it's a necessary condition. So what I say about intention, nothing in the universe exists without intention.
mm,
So if you look around you, Apple doesn't exist without intention. Amazon, BP, Shell, Walmart, all these amazing companies exist because someone or a group of people had an intention to create that business. You know, the clothes that we're wearing don't exist without intention. And so it goes on. But intention is not sufficient. It's necessary, but not sufficient. And we all know that many times in my life, I've created an intention to lose some weight. and then on the Wednesday or the Thursday, you're in a cafe and you see a little bit of carrot cake winking at you and you have the cake. And so you're not aligned with that intention. Or I decide that I'm going to get fit and I take out a gym membership and I never go to the gym. If you never go, you're not aligned with your intention. And one of the things that I often talk to businesses about, one of the steps in alignment, is what I call pruning. So again, using the gardening analogy, every gardener will tell you in the early years, they never pruned back sufficiently. But the extent of the harvest, the extent of the growth is affected by how you prune. And if anyone isn't aligned with the intention, you need to let them go. You can let them go well. I say people stay well or they go well. But if you don't want to align with this intention, please go and be happy somewhere else.
Absolutely.
It's really important.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of businesses, they hold on to people that are deliberately undermining the process by being there, but they feel a misplaced sense of loyalty.
Yes. Yeah. And I've been guilty of that myself, just holding on
Yeah,
to
me too.
people for way too long.
Yeah.
You either feel guilty or you feel like maybe oh, I'm not going to find anybody that's better, so might as well just stick with what I know. And that's true in so many different things. But yeah, you have to prune. I like that idea. And
It's
not only just people, but just ideas that maybe aren't working or relevant in your
exactly.
business.
Exactly. And the other thing you touched on in terms of alignment is I often talk about, I like talking about the new mathematics, because when we were at school, we were taught that 1 + 1 + 1 equals 3. And what I teach is 1 + 1 + 1 equals 7. Because when you get the power of that alignment, and I forget, you might remember who it was, but somebody talked about the wisdom of geese. And scientists have studied geese and they fly in this V shape. And they've discovered that geese, when they fly, are 72% more efficient than if they were flying on their own. 72%.
Oh,
And
I did not know
it's
that.
like cyclists, in a peloton, you see someone goes to the front, they do a stint, then they fall back. But this is a massive percentage. And if we could learn from the innate wisdom of geese, if we really worked in that collaborative, supportive environment, it's infinitely more powerful. So
I
this again is
agree.
another part of alignment. You set the intention. By aligning to that intention, you're putting yourself way ahead of the herd.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Like, and I'm just using my app as an analogy in my head of how that works. I mean, like if we are going to meet every Monday morning, and part of everybody has something that they need to have accomplished or present as a new idea, we're all accountable.
Yep.
And for example, I'm accountable for coming up with new content every week. If I don't have this team and I don't necessarily have the development to get my new content into the app, then maybe going to be a little, I'm not going to necessarily do it
No.
because nobody's going to know and no one's going to be there to actually deal with it. So I think just having the accountability of everybody knows what the deal is. Everybody has the same intention, and now everybody needs to perform up to the standard of that
Yeah.
intention.
And it doesn't mean that we all have to be the same. There's nothing worse than gathering a group of people together that are exactly the same or think in the same way. It's not like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's about people coming together with different skill set, with different personalities, with different idiosyncrasies, but aligning to the one intention. You can't have more than one intention. So it's the intention is a little bit like the compass. And
Mm-hmm.
when I've worked with businesses, I say to them, every new business meeting you go in, every staff meeting, every stakeholder meeting, every board meeting is aligned with that intention. That's why we're here. It's like the DNA of the organization. And you watch big organizations coming into alignment with that, and the results are phenomenal. It's very simple, but it's incredibly effective.
Would you say is it similar to a mission statement in a way? I mean,
Yeah, people often ask that. And the thing about mission statements, and I'm a little bit, maybe a little bit skeptical, a tiny bit cynical about mission statements, because big companies over the last 20, 30 years, they used to produce a report and account every year. They probably still do. And almost every company says our most important asset walks out of the door at night, and they're talking about their employees. But most of those companies do not treat their employees extremely well. In the same way, when sustainability came along, people created a sustainability policy, they tick the box, but they don't really, their heart's not in it. And it's the same when I've sat and talked to companies about their mission statement. It seems and not all the time, but very often it's a little bit shallow. So what they're doing is it looks nice, it reads nice, it's got all the right words in it, but actually they're not embodying it. So intention, it's back to this idea of the seed. Intention means you're all in.
Yeah.
It's like we embody it. And in my book on intention, which is honestly, it's a very, very simple book. It takes an hour and a half to read, but I talk about the process where I get people to step in and out of their intention so that we embody it. We need to, the body is a very important part of who we are. We are somebody. And
Somebody,
there
yeah.
was a guy called Wilhelm Reich who said the body is the unconscious. But so literally the body contains an awful lot of data that is outside of our awareness. So when we align our body, and it's often, for me personally, when I want to find out what's getting in the way, I listen to the body. I tune into my body more and more, because the body is a huge resource in terms of telling us where we're a little bit stuck, where we're resisting, where we're not aligned.
Yeah, it's such a great feedback. I mean, the gut, like you were saying, I
Yeah,
mean, provides so much information. And I mean, if you're really in touch with yourself, and even if you're not in touch with yourself, but the more I feel like the more you are in alignment and in touch with yourself, you really get signals from the body about whether you're moving in the right direction or or in the wrong direction, whether you're in alignment with what you're saying or not. And so it's,
absolutely true. And this is very old research now, but scientists in 20 years ago now, that in laboratory setting, they discovered that 70 something, over 70% of all communication was nonverbal. We have about 55,000 nerve endings in our face that we're reading all the time without really knowing it. So children are much more advanced than adults in this. Their children know what their parents, whatever they're saying, they know the truth of what's really going on. And when you tune into your body, animals again, cats, dogs, they often know what's really going on. So when we tune into the body, we're tuning into this reservoir of information, which we are a little bit disconnected from. And the more, just as you said, Victoria, I agree completely, the more connected we are with our body, with ourselves, the better our intention is going to be, the better the alignment is going to be.
yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, it's so true. It's just so true. So, getting a little bit more into just the creation of intention, like how does a person or a business know if their intention is, if they're setting a realistic intention?
A realistic. So, yeah, that's a great question. And a couple of examples might be if I set an intention that I want to run 100 meters in under 10 seconds, then the moment as I'm setting that intention, I know that probably only 200 or 300 people on the planet have ever done that. They were
Mhm.
all under 30 years old, and I'm in my 60s. So the moment I set that intention, everything in me, in my unconscious mind, in my body, is telling me I can't do it. So the intention is destroyed before it even gets out of the traps. So
Mhm.
that would be an example of an unrealistic intention. You know, in the same way, there's this, you'd be very familiar with this sort of wealth creation industry, which is a $2 billion industry where people are taught to stand in front of the mirror and say, I will be a billionaire by Friday. You know, now it's a little bit of an exaggeration. But if I was to do that, and people do this to undermine the efficacy of the law of attraction, when I'm standing in front of the mirror and saying I'm going to be a billionaire in next year, something in me is already telling myself that's impossible. So
Mhm.
nobody else other than me is undermining that.
Right.
So an intention needs to be a little bit of a stretch. It needs to be outside of our comfort zone, but it needs to be, I think to myself, yeah, I can see that. So for me, if I'm in a business, I want to double the size of my business. Yeah, I think I can do that.
Mhm.
And maybe it takes 18 months or 24 months, I don't know, but I'm going to double the size of my business. If my business was turning over £1 million and I said I'm going to turn it into £100 million business, there's a problem because I'm already telling myself it can't be done.
Right.
So you need to have something that is a stretch, but not something that I'm going to undermine immediately. That's the key.
So I'm going to go one step further with this question and go like, so let's just say that something should be realistic. Okay. Like when I say should be real, it could be realistic for this other person who has a belief system that
Yeah,
supports that. But maybe you don't have that belief system, but it could be real. It could be very realistic if you just had a different level of belief. How do you, you know, what would you say to a person who like they, it's like this should be realistic, but I just can't get myself to believe it.
yeah. It's a wonderful example, and all of us have had experience of this. We understand this. So if you take it into the arena of relationships, suppose a man or woman or whoever, we're 30, 40 years old, we want a relationship, but we've had a lot of hurt, maybe even a little bit of trauma in the past in terms of relationship. And there's this inner belief, there's this limiting belief that I'm not worthy or that I don't deserve someone being kind to me. However much you deal with the left brain, you set goals, you tell yourself that there's still something that is very, very deep. And so what I do with this is I work with the body, and I set up a polarity of maybe not deserving it, or the part of me that doesn't think I can achieve it, and I sit with that, and I look at the bodily sensations of that, and then I move into the other end of the polarity and see how the body is responding to the opposite, that actually I'm going to be in this loving relationship. It's not going to be pinky perfect, but it's going to be sustaining. It's going to help me grow. It's going to support me, and gradually work with these polarities. And what you find is the body begins to create an awareness of actually that's possible. And we're not just talking about neurological pathways, of course, that we can recreate some neurological pathways. But once the body sees that this is a realistic, and actually there's no reason why somebody couldn't love me, why somebody couldn't want to share their life with me, then you begin to get into the realm of manifesting it from that intention.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's yeah, that's very intelligent, it's very wise, and getting experiencing both ends of the spectrum with your body and your emotional experience of that. Now, are there intentions that a company or person might set that, what if that intention has like a negative effect on others?
Well, of course, the thing about intention, because it's powerful, it would be possible for someone to create an intention to take over the world, or an intention to invade other countries, or throughout history, if you look at the history of the human race, there have been people that have created an intention to destroy other countries or other nations. So yes, I mean, the intention doesn't have its own morality. It's like the power of intention is, if your intention is to hurt other people, harm other people, then that's what you have the capacity to do that. However, everyone else's intention, if other people are creating an intention to be happy, to be kind, then probably they're going to avoid that energetic dynamic. And what always happens in history, is that when there is some sort of individual, normally men, almost exclusively men, that's creating intention to dominate others, there's a huge amount of collusion with that. There's a huge amount of disempowerment. And it's up to other people, as we're seeing in all sorts of areas of life now, that other people need to take responsibility and stand up and say, no, we're not, that's not our way forward. We want to create a different kind of life. And I think we're at quite a pivotal time at the moment, where there's a lot of different conflicting and competing ideas and approaches to life. And I try not to get too involved in the debate. I go back inside myself and I practice what I preach, not all the time, but to the best of my ability. And we need to actually realize that by taking care of our inner world, then we're going to create a different outer world. And this is really simple stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, I often say that I think scientists have said that something like 1 minute of fear or 1 minute of anxiety weakens the immune system for up to 6 hours.
Oh, wow. I had no
Yeah.
idea it was that big
And,
of an impact.
if you create a lot of fear and if you create a lot of anxiety, then it's much easier to control people, much easier.
Yeah.
Whereas, and also fear is the antithesis of self-love, for example. So if you develop an inner well-being, if you develop inner self-love, then that is infectious. That is going to boost your immunity. A sense of well-being strengthens your immunity.
That's great.
So it's very simple stuff, and a lot of us have actually not been taught this in our education. I never took a class. I never took a class on self-love.
And it's probably one of the most important things. I mean, I could probably, do without the cooking class or the, domestication and all of that, and learn some other skills like self-love. I mean, so much more is available to you just by standing up for yourself and loving yourself and having the self-confidence and the self-esteem, and not allowing other people or things or circumstances in. You don't have to allow that into your brain or your body or anything. Well, my last question for you, unless you have more to offer, is
Can I just add one more thing? Because it was
absolutely,
a
yeah,
wonderful American woman, the wife of US President Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "No one can diminish me without my permission."
yes,
No one. Now, I was somebody that as a boy, I was bullied very badly. But
Mm.
no one can bully me without my permission.
That's
No
right.
one can abuse me without my permission. So again, it comes back to what we were talking earlier, Victoria, and it's a very tough question, but it's responsibility. Now in my life, no one would be allowed to bully me. It's something I've worked on for 30, 40 years. But now I'm at a place where I just wouldn't let it happen. And guess what? Which you would understand from the law, it doesn't happen. It doesn't show up in my life. So
No, what you
yeah,
focus on is what you get.
yeah,
And and I had the same thing growing up as well. And and obviously I did, I'm very thankful that I went through that, because it was that was like the catalyst for wanting to learn more about personal development and self-confidence, and help other people to overcome those things. Um so just, moving into the
sure.
the last question that I had for you today was, really about, there's a lot of businesses out there that, they want to get ahead, they want to set this intention, they want to, move forward, but, they're just stuck. And so how how do you suggest, or how do you work with these businesses to, help them just, get unstuck and get going in the right direction where they want to
Sure.
go?
I think it's a universal experience, Victoria. In my personal life and in my professional life, many, many times have I come up against this feeling of being stuck. And for me now in my life, actually, it's probably in my personal life, it's one of the worst experiences. It's like I like to feel I'm moving, I'm evolving. So being stuck is a horrible feeling.
Mhm.
And yet we've all been there, and I'm sure I'll be there again. So it sounds countercultural and it sounds counterintuitive. But the first thing I say to people is don't try and fix it. Don't try and fix it, because what happens is when we get stuck, we begin to constantly and slightly compulsively look for solutions. And, and we end up running around. That the more intelligent question, which we touched on earlier, and this is the really intelligent question, is why am I creating this stuckness? Why am I
That's a great
treading water?
question.
What's getting in the way of just evolving to the next level? Because we're part of an evolutionary cycle. We've been evolving for 14 billion years, and we're going to carry on evolving. So forward momentum, evolution is the most natural way. As you look around you, the leaves on a tree, that they fall off, the tree goes dead, and then every spring we're coming into this new period of spring. There's this new life comes forward, and nothing too much gets in the way. So when we're stuck, what we tend to do is rush around. We look for things to blame. Stop all that. We get stuck, we sit back, we pause, and we say, why would I be creating this? And normally, quite quickly, particularly if I'm working with something comes up. And
Mhm.
normally it's often quite a big thing. It's like a big potato. You work through that and the business flows again. I've seen it happen time and time again.
That makes a lot of sense. And I've been there myself. I know sometimes if I get stuck, it's just like, it's easy to get into like a mania, or like a little
Yeah.
frantic zone, or like, okay, I gotta, and,
I've got to fix
and
it.
you gotta fix it. And,
Yeah.
and oh my goodness, I just get flooded with ideas of, different, but yeah, you have to kind of, I agree, it's better just to kind of slow down, and take actually even a step back, and figure out what went wrong that got me stuck in the first place, so I don't go back and repeat that mistake and just start going into all these different directions. So it's
Yeah.
a really, really smart way of doing that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your school for business alchemy. You have an online program, and can you tell us a little bit about what that entails? And I understand you're also kind of giving a nice special offer for our
Yeah,
listeners
that's
today
right.
who sign up.
Especially for you, Victoria, and for all your listeners. Yeah.
All right.
So what happened is when I started working for businesses, I was approached by someone who was CEO of a business I'd worked with, and I was approached to write a book. So I wrote a book setting out the principles behind the work I did with organizations and businesses. And then, of course, it's not a natural thing for me, but somebody comes along and says, why don't you embody this in an online program? So I worked for about a year putting together this program. And it's a 10 module program. So there's 10 different modules. And each module has 4 different videos. And then there's a whole lot of course material. And you won't be surprised to know that the first module is intention. So everything starts with intention. And by the way, the second module is alignment. So
Mm.
basically, people work through this program online. There's online support, and I suggest to people that they take up to 12 months to do this. Now, I've known many people who've done the whole program in 3 months. So it's
Hmm.
possible to do that. But it's like everything in life. Now I'm a little older and just a little wiser than I used to be. If I'm reading a book, I take 2 or 3 times longer to read it because I want to really drink it in and immerse it and reflect on it as I go. Um, so it's from 3 to 12 months. It's 10 modules, and it takes people through this process. It shows them exactly how to set the intention, how to align it, and then it talks about the obstacles that are in the way. And ultimately, I think the final module is about living from an infinite place rather than the limiting beliefs that you were talking about earlier. It's possible to run a business, develop a business from an infinite, perspective.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That
Yeah.
sounds like a great, great course. And so that's going to really help take that person from maybe being stuck in their business to, learning the right way to set. And even if they're not stuck and they just want to, get in alignment with
Yeah.
an intention. And so setting that intention, getting into alignment in it, and ultimately being able to manifest beyond the limits that you currently
Yeah.
see right now. Because, we can only manifest up to our present level of awareness.
Yeah.
And so being able to expand that and take that into infinite levels of success, that sounds wonderful.
And one of
And
the things, sorry,
go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, one of the things that always impresses me is you can imagine I get called into a lot of businesses that are underperforming and businesses that are stuck. But from time to time, I go into a business that the results are just phenomenal. And they say, we want to do more. And I love working with businesses like that because they're not too proud or they're not too, self congratulating to say there's more out there, we can go further. So it's wonderful working with businesses that are already successful, but they can go to the next level.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I love thinking about going to the next level and helping other people to do that in their business. So that's the School for Business Alchemy online program, and they can get to that at the School for Business Alchemy.org. And that's normally, you want to go into the special offer that you're
Well, what
giving,
I
or
said is that based on this podcast, anyone who signs up within the next couple of months can get a 50% discount. So I think
yes.
on the site, if you just contact us, there'll be somebody there that will send you a special code. It'll probably be Victoria #1 or something,
Okay.
and they can get a 50% discount.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put that information in the show notes before
Okay,
this
brilliant.
airs. And that way people can just go right there and they know exactly what to put in order to get that 50% discount. So that's wonderful. And it's very generous. Thank you so much
It's a
for
pleasure. It's
offering
a
that for
pleasure.
our listeners. And this has just been a wonderful, insightful, enlightening conversation. And I love talking about intention and alignment and all the things that we have shared today and that you've shared with our audience is just very generous amount of information. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Your Mind podcast and sharing your wisdom and your insights and your information with us. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Victoria. Thank you very much for asking me. It's been very enjoyable and inspiring. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.